Attachment style is the biggest predictor of how somebody communicates in a relationship. But did you know that it's also one of the biggest predictors of whether or not you can get your ex back after a breakup? The truth is that you can win back an anxious ex, but you do need to be aware of their particular quirks and needs if you want to make it happen, and it's probably not going to be as easy as you might think. Hi guys, I'm Brad Browning, and as the author of The X Factor, I've helped so many different couples get back together, and over that time I've noticed a pattern. Basically, I could separate people into different groups based on how they responded to different strategies. And when I looked into it a little bit further, it turned out that those groups corresponded to the different attachment styles. So to start, we have to talk a little bit about attachment styles. Basically, it all comes out of an idea called attachment theory. And the idea is that everyone has an attachment style. And this style determines the way that you create an attachment to any other person, whether that's romantic, platonic, family, whatever. So if you're connecting with another person on a deeper level, your attachment style is going to come into play to determine how you interact with that person. Now, there are 4 attachment styles: secure, disorganized, avoidant, and anxious. For the purposes of this video, we really only need to worry about the final 2. Now, if you're wondering how to tell your attachment style, look at how you respond to moments of stress in the relationship. And this can be a bad thing, like an argument, or a good thing, like getting intimate together for the first time, or maybe moving in together. Basically, if it's something that challenges the status quo of the relationship, it'll trigger your attachment style. Now, this moment throws you off your balance and causes you to act out in one of 2 ways. Now, if you respond to this situation by pulling away, icing your partner out, or just generally trying to get a bunch of space, then you likely have an avoidant attachment style. On the other hand, if you respond by trying to get closer to your partner, messaging them nonstop, trying to get their love and attention, and generally just being a little smothering, then you probably have an anxious attachment style. And obviously, the same goes for your ex. People with anxious attachment have a deep fear of abandonment, and they can often feel insecure in relationships. They need constant reassurance and may overthink situations, feeling more vulnerable and sensitive to perceived threats to the relationship. Basically, they're eager to connect. And they also want to please you because they're worried about being abandoned. If you leave them on red, then they think you hate them. If you don't tell them you love them enough, they'll stop believing it. That's basically anxious attachment in a nutshell. And just a sidebar, in this video, I'll be talking about both people with, anxious attachment style and people with just general anxiety, because there's obviously, a ton of overlap there. But just know that it's not 100%. For example, some people with anxiety actually have an avoidant attachment style. Their anxiety causes them to withdraw and not deal with their partner because it triggers their issues. And sometimes people can be in perfect mental health except when it comes to their relationships, where they turn into an anxious mess. With all that said, I'm going to use the terms interchangeably here. So you just have to use some critical thinking to determine if what I say applies to your particular ex. Just something to keep in mind as we get into this. All right, and that brings us to a common pattern here. Now, the reason that I brought up avoidant attachment is because it's very, very common for anxious people to date avoidant partners. You see this all the time, right? One person needs closeness and the other needs space. Things are good at first, but then the avoidant pulls away and the anxious pursues them. The avoidant feels smothered and the anxious feels like their needs aren't being met. Now, if this was a pattern in your relationship, don't worry, because it's pretty standard stuff for a lot of relationships, and it's not all bad. There are some good aspects to this dynamic as well. Now, the 2 can actually balance each other out on some level. So the avoidant can be a source of comfort and stability for the anxious person, and the anxious person's persistence will allow the avoidant to accept some of the love that they want but are afraid to ask for. But this can obviously lead to disaster if both parties don't learn to overcome the shortcomings of their attachment style. In fact, chances are this played a big part in your breakup. You felt smothered and you pulled away, and they felt like they were the only one that was actually, making any effort in the relationship. And though this might not have been what caused it all to fall apart in the end, this kind of dynamic makes a relationship really fragile because of the resentment that builds up around it. And another factor is who ultimately pulled the plug on the relationship. Typically, the avoidant will leave the relationship early on because they fear that closeness. But this flips the longer the relationship goes on. So if you've been together for a while, then it's more common for the anxious person to pull the plug because their partner isn't meeting their needs. Now, this can prove to be, a real barrier to reconnecting for an obvious reason. Anxious people want closeness. They don't see the appeal in being single the way that avoidants might. So they don't really want to break up. And that means, that things had to be really bad before they were willing to pull the trigger. So in this situation, when an anxious person leaves, they have typically been feeling this way for a while and they're set on their decision. But thankfully, there are still ways to reach them. If you can appeal to your ex's desire for closeness and their loneliness, then you can overcome this barrier and you can get them back. Remember, they desire that closeness and they're willing to take steps to get it. So this means that if you can get them interested, they're more likely to chase you down and demand a second chance. So how do you do this? Well, first off, you need to begin with a period of no contact after the breakup. Now, of course, this might be hard because an anxious partner will often try to keep you around in some form, typically by trying to, stay friends. Remember, they're really hurt by rejection and abandonment, so even if they're the one who broke it off, it'll really sting to have you, refuse to hang around in the relationship and stay in that relationship limbo with them. So this means, don't agree to stay friends with your anxious ex. In many situations, they'll ask you to remain friends not just because they have that desire for closeness with you, but also because they fear separation, they fear rejection and disconnection. So by being friends with them, you're essentially soothing their broken heart, which of course is not the goal here. Also, don't have any long drawn-out conversations with your ex. Don't be overly kind or complimentary towards them, because that's just going to give them a chance to really get over you. And what you want, and this might sound bad, but you want them to be in pain and to feel lost without you, because this gives them a huge incentive to return. For a truly anxious ex, your absence will feel like a black hole, and this can be enough to make them come running back to you just so they can fill that void and feel whole again. And no contact triggers anxious people like nothing else. And you need to be radio silent. I really mean that, so don't contact them at all. But there is one big adjustment that I'd like you to make to the formula when you're dealing with an anxious ex. Now, they're most likely going to reach out to you during this time. Most exes will do this, but especially anxious ones. And in this situation, you don't want to just totally ignore them like I might sometimes otherwise recommend. Instead, you need to engage with them just a tiny, tiny bit. You need to tell them some version of the following for the first time when they reach out to you. Say something like, it's nice hearing from you. I wish I could talk, but I think I need some space. I'm trying to move on, and it's going to be too painful if we keep talking like this. Now, normally I wouldn't necessarily recommend this kind of vulnerability, but for an anxious ex, and especially if you're in the anxious avoidant pattern that we talked about earlier, this is an important step. Because one of the factors in your breakup was your ex not feeling like you cared or loved them. They felt distant from you because you were distant, or because their expectations of closeness were too high, either way. So if you just flat out ignore them, they're going to be even more hurt, and this will just confirm for them the idea that you're just not going to fulfill their needs, that you don't care. By saying that you can't talk to them because it's too painful, this will let them know that you do care about them. Really, you care too much, and that's why you need to stay away. Now, it's a subtle difference, but it'll help keep your ex's feelings for you alive during no contact. And from there, just do no contact as normal. Stay away, do your own thing, and improve your life while mourning the breakup. Now, if you feel lost without your ex, I would love to help you out. As a breakup coach, I've helped tens of thousands of people get their exes back, sometimes in situations that seemed completely hopeless. So go to breakupbrad.com/coaching to sign up. When you do sign up, I work with you directly to put together a plan that's tailored to your ex. And by talking it out, we can come to a solution that will work faster and more effectively. Again, just go to breakupbrad.com/coaching to find out how it works and sign up today. For now, let's get back to it. And now the question is, where do you go after no contact is over? Obviously, you can't keep it going forever. After a few weeks, if they haven't changed their mind and come running back to you, then you do need to reach out and begin the process of reattraction. And here's where having an anxious ex will help you. Because as I said earlier, if you can get past their initial hesitation, it's going to become quite easy to fall back into the old pattern. Really, all you'll need to do is be, a little bit more loving, more friendly, and more available than you had been during the relationship. And this is going to give them the sense that you've changed and that this time things are going to be different if they are willing to trust you again. Now, of course, you don't just want to come out and say this. You want to show them through your actions. So be consistent and attentive, and really, don't fake this. If you want the relationship to work, you need to be willing to do this stuff on an ongoing basis. But remember, there is a fine line here. You don't want to love bomb them or really come on too strong. Being anxious doesn't make them blind to red flags, and putting all your eggs in their basket is definitely going to be a red flag. Now, another thing that you need to consider here is making your ex jealous. Now, I often recommend using jealousy to make your ex want to chase you, and I still do if your ex is anxious, but you do need to be very, very subtle here. So don't even vaguely imply that you're seeing anyone new here, even if you actually are. Remember, one of their triggers is fear of being abandoned, cheated on, whatever. They basically felt replaceable, and if you show them how easily you've moved on with somebody new, they're most likely going to pull away further, and you may lose them for good. But then, how can you make them jealous in a way that has nothing to do with you dating new people? And the answer is simple. It's just by instilling a little bit of FOMO or fear of missing out, and just basically make them see the awesome life that you're leading without them. You want them to see that you're out there having fun, hanging out with your friends and family, and just generally living it up. This is going to make them jealous really on a different level. They'll be jealous of you for the fun that you're having without them, but they'll also be jealous of the people around you because they wish that they could connect with you like that. And if you happen to post pictures that show that you have a few attractive people around you, all the better. Just don't get too touchy with them and you'll have really nothing to worry about. Now, another factor here I want to touch on is communication. Now, you shouldn't rush back into the relationship. Don't get too deep into heavy conversations too early on, and definitely, don't be talking to them all day, every day. Just stay consistent and interested when you do actually talk to them. And when a conversation doesn't naturally come to a close, it's okay to cut it off. So something like, hey, it's been great talking to you, but I'm headed out to meet my friends. I'll have to catch up with you later. You might feel like you're rejecting them, but really it's actually going to help them feel more connected to you by saying that kind of thing. Because for anxious people, the alternative is them thinking that you're ignoring their last message. But that said, there is a little bit of room for playing games. It is okay not to respond to messages for a few hours. This will get your ex wondering, what you're doing, and it'll essentially trigger that fear response, but not enough to really upset them. You'll get their heart rate up and make them miss you even more. Just be careful not to overuse it. All right, so there you have it. To get an anxious ex back, you first need to understand attachment styles and how they impact the patterns in your relationship and your breakup. And then you need to use that information to draw your ex in by being consistent and by showing them you've changed. If you have any questions about the process, just leave them in the comments below. I promise to read them and get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. I'm Brad Browning, and I will see you next time right here.